Hey, everyone. It is super late, Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. I've been meaning to do a comic book countdown for weeks and weeks. So I've ended up with a pile of 23 comics. And I actually pulled some comics out because I didn't want to. 23 is more than enough. Um, but things have just gotten in my way all August long. And now we're into September. We're past Labor Day here in the US, and I need to get my act in gear. So I'm kind of probably going to rush through these. But anyway, 23 comics from the last 4 or 5 weeks. In at number 23 was Cruel Universe. Amazing cover. Just love the look of these new EC books, but and the I liked the art in here, but each of the stories fell down in its own way. There was a kind of metaphor for racism that just did not work at all. It did not have it make sense internally from what we were shown. There was something about communicating with dolphins that just fell apart completely and didn't make sense. And then there was a sort of on the nose. It was the best story in of the new stories in this issue. A story about a super selfish billionaire in a very science fictional situation. But the art seemed great. So I blame the writers, like, or the editor working with the writers. Like, let's develop these stories more. At the back is a story by William Gaines, Al Feldstein, and Bernard Krigstein, reprinted from Weird Fantasy from 1953. And it's a story that has a lot of weaknesses too, but at least it has a payoff. It has a real point to make, and actually was a positive point in the end, even though there was some horror involved. Um, that's the other thing. When I told my daughter about I sort of gave her a précis of all the stories I'd read in here because she always wants me to do that. And she kind of joked that this was like instead of grim dark, it was grim derp, which means trying so hard to be dark, a grim dark that you just end up kind of foolish and silly. So that's kind of where this landed. It did make me think of I'm always thinking about artist versus writer or who contributes what. Um, and there was an editor who also became a writer who was talking once in a podcast I listened to about how unless you're there, unless you're one of the creators, you don't really know who did what in a comic book, like who contributed what. So it's possible that somehow the artists uh, helped the fouling up of these stories, but it felt like it was all the writer's fault to me. It was more complicated in Cul-de-sac, written by Mike Carey, one of my favorite writers, with an artist who was new to me, Jonathan Weishak, who has a really unique style, a bit like Bill Sienkiewicz meets some kind of children's story illustrator in some bizarre, horrific way. Um, and so on paper, I should have liked this. And when a first flip through, it's like, whoa, this is really cool, intense art. But I ended up just not liking the art. And I don't know if it's like, it's just me or if there was something wrong with the storytelling. I think it's just me. Um, it's really cool looking, but somehow as I read it, I just started disliking it. And the story is kind of another variation on vampires, and that part just seemed okay to me. It didn't grab me the way other Mike Carey books have, although it's been quite a while. My favorite Mike Carey books are from quite a while ago. Um, Lucifer and what was that one called? It was about the son of a kids book author, and it was a Vertigo book, and now I can't think of the name of it. But anyhow, so it did have me kind of wondering: is this like, is this the fault of the artist, or fault of the writer, or neither? Just or my fault as a matter of taste. In at number 21, Resurrection Man. Here I have a very strong divide between the writing and the art. I definitely feel like the artist is doing a great job. I suppose you could, both of them have to contribute to the storytelling, but um, I just think I presume this kind of circular, slightly confusing story comes from the writer Ram V and not from the artist Anand RK. Um, and Anand RK is the one who seems to just keep my interest in this. And I kind of run up against the thing where a book where the art is wowing me, but the story isn't doing much for me. The first three issues, I'm all into it, and then I slowly start fading with my interest. But I think this is book 5. I'm thinking it's going to stop with book 6, but we'll see. The Flash, Absolute Flash number, I put in at number 20. Um, this was a solid backstory. This we sort of stop our main story and do a backfill, and it was a solid, good sort of filling us in on some information that it was useful to know. I just didn't get super excited about it. Maybe it's me. I'm just sort of phasing out of Absolute Flash, but it was a solid comic. I have to say, other than the few belly flops in those, maybe those first two, there was a lot of good comics I read during this month. I enjoy This Ends Tonight. Again, with the artist versus writer, it's stuck in my head. Um, I think I like the art. Like, I feel like the art is at a higher level than the writing. This book has 3 writers, one pencil artist and a color artist. The Jay Lee being the line artist, and June Chung, I think, is always his colorist. I'm not sure if is she his wife or anyway, they're always partnered up. Um, I think they could do better than these writers, but the story was entertaining enough. Um, it's, and it's I think each issue, this is issue 2, and I think there's just gonna be 3 issues. Each issue is about a different group of women and their adventures, which all are very violent in Las Vegas over one night. This group of women are assassins, but they're celebrating someone's final night before marriage, so a bachelorette party. The previous one, I think, was it like a graduation party, but the people turned out to be part of some secret cult of elves. I guess I just spoiled that. Um, the Thing was actually a really strong strongest issue in this run so far, written by Tony Fleece, art by Justin Mason, and colors by Alex Sinclair. And um, the Thing and this young girl that he's protecting are running a gauntlet. The young girl is like, why is all this violence happening? You know, what's going on? You know, I think she's as horrified by the Thing as by all the villains. It was definitely an interesting, fun, smash 'em up, villain after villain after villain. So pretty cool. I'm sort of turning me around on this Thing series, which I thought was nothing special, but it's kind of capturing my interest now. I'm assuming it just has 1 or 2 more issues to go. Pale Knight, number 4, is our very dark, depressing story of a knight returning from the Crusades and making a deal with death, and everybody's dying of the plague. It's pretty brutal. Quite an emotional, a dark emotional ride. But the interesting thing about this is the art does something I usually hate, or not hate, but usually feel cheated by. But it does it excellently in here, which is a lot of not too much background, a lot being done by the color in the background, and it somehow just melds really well with the line work. We've got Val Rodriguez doing the line work, Chris Peter, colorist, and Peter Milligan creating this dark but compelling story. So yeah, it's a really good package. It's a little on the depressing side. Um, Blink Until You Miss It, issue number 1. I enjoyed this a lot. I like the art, the coloring, um, and I think I like the story. We're getting just a taste of the story in this first issue. I think this is the kind of thing that's going to work better in a trade, in terms of capturing your audience as your strategy as a writer. You might want to put more of the hook in your first issue, a little more reason to keep reading. Although I'm going to keep reading, and I think I am if I can find the next issue. Um, it's basically kind of a horror story, but kind of meditative about going back to your past and aging and the relationships of the past and the present. So quite cool. Uh, and I guess part of what I was my thinking is if this were by a really well-known writer, say it was by Rick Remender, who most of us know what to expect from a Rick Remender book, it would be okay that only a little bit is hinted at in the first issue. But uh, with writer Ethan Parker, two writers, Ethan Parker and Griffin Sheridan, I don't know who they are. I don't know whether to trust them. I don't have a history with them. Maybe some people do, but I've never heard of them. So it seems commercially a little bit foolish not to front load your first issue a little more. But yeah, in at no, so the Thing was 18, Pale Knight 17, Blinken You'll Miss It I put at 16. In at 15 was The Hero Trade, another another new book from Bad Idea, who's making this kind of comeback because Cul-de-sac was from Bad Idea also. And both of these books are on interesting feeling newsprint. This one, The Hero Trade, is in black and white. It was definitely something I had to try. Matt Kindt and David Lapham, two creators I like a lot. Um, it it had a lot of cool David Lapham feel to me up until the point where we realized it's a superhero story, which I should have guessed from the from the title. However, it's still really good, but it's suddenly like a weird friction between kind of the more mundane, creepy life aspects that David Lapham brings to it, and then this sort of over the top big plot that we're apparently going to have. Although it'll be interesting to see how they continue to handle it. I definitely liked it a lot, liked the David Lapham art a lot, and we get a relationship between two people who are working for some agency that's exploiting superpowered people. So they're not superpowered, and we spend most of our time with them. It's almost a shock when we have a moment where the superheroing or superpowered, not heroic really, stuff is being done. At the back was a backup story called The Last 7 Days by Joshua Dysart, and it was just bleak and hopeless. It had great coloring, but man, was that bleak and hopeless. I almost wished I hadn't read it. Anyway, I'm really curious to see where the Hero Trade is going. I do have a lot of questions. It is interesting for these creators to be doing yet another twist on superheroes. Is it enough of a twist to make it an important book? But it's definitely going to be a fun book. Probably not going to be important in the long run, but I'm really enjoying Krypto, Last Dog of Krypton. Written by Ryan North, art by what's his first name? Norton. Of course, the credits aren't where I can immediately find them. But anyway, love the art and color. Mike Norton, artist. Ian Herring, colorist. Um, and it's a strong story told very rapidly. Or this chapter is very rapid, so it's a very quick read. There's only little bits of dialogue, but I thought it was pretty powerful. And we're starting to get a little more Superdog in the mix, which is cool. I complained a little in the last issue that there was no sign of Krypto having superpowers. Well, we're starting to get that. Definitely cool. In at number 13, I'm putting The Invisible Man, written by James Tynion, art by the wonderful artist Danny, who kind of has a minimalistic, shadowy style that's super effective. I think this cover is this cover by Danny? Yeah, it is by Danny. There's her signature there. Um, and Tinian and Danny are taking an interesting tack where they're exploring the psychology of the person who becomes the Invisible Man before he became the Invisible Man. And that could be a recipe for disaster or a boring story, but actually it's really cool so far. So enjoying the art and the story. Um, I do feel bad that I haven't rushed out and watched The Invisible Man, but maybe I will read all of this since it's kind of a prequel to The Invisible Man, and then watch the Universal Invisible Man. I'm putting in at number 12, Supergirl. Um, this keeps growing as a book. With each issue, I feel like our writer artist Sophie Campbell gets stronger as a writer. She's already incredibly good as an artist. She's like getting a bead on her characters. My daughter also read this, and we both agree that the scene where Supergirl is suddenly hot for the cliched looking hot guy at the nightclub didn't quite work. But other than that, it's still a bit on the talky side. But there's a first appearance of a new superhero in here, and it's just fun. Conan comes in at number 11. Conan the Barbarian, number 23. We're continuing kind of a build up to some larger story about Thoth Amon, and I forget what they're going to call. They have a an event coming up, and so it's fun. The art's pretty cool. Who's this artist? The coloring's cool. Uh, Ferocious Fernando Daguino is the artist. But Conan is just, these color Conan books are just not my favorite anymore. They're fun, they're good, but they're not my favorite anymore because of the event-itis that is sort of overshadowing everything that happens in them. In at number 10 is Sleep, which has definitely grown on me. I almost canceled it from my pull list. Um, Partially because of my expectations of Xander Cannon coming from Kaiju Max, and partially because I just don't like his super overuse of the gray wash over all of his art. And I continue to have a bit of a trouble with that, but I'm more sucked in to the characters and the issues going on here of whether this guy, whenever he falls asleep, turns into a monster and kills everyone, or is something else going on. And we're the concepts of good and evil and religion are explored a little bit in here. And very solid horror comic without, focusing on it. It's dark, but it, the focus is a little different, and the focus is definitely not on gore. Um, Speaking of dark, this is the first issue of Vanishing Point, which is a sort of anthology book always written by Mark Russell with different artists each issue, standalone stories each issue. This is the first issue that doesn't end in a totally dark way. Humanity is gone, but the robots carry on. Um, and there was something kind of uplifting about that. But along the way, it was kind of a seemingly disturbing story. It was kind of a relief when we realized what was really happening. So anyway, strong stuff. Um, I guess I guess it makes me a bit of a wimp that I prefer stories that have something uplifting to them out of the darkness. Okay, Benjamin, I put in, this is the third and final issue of Benjamin, and I put it in at number 8. It ranks pretty high because I've loved the whole series. It's kind of a weaker ending than the rest of the journey to the ending. I think they wanted too much to twist the story to have it make it there. To have it make it a more uplifting, positive end. It didn't. I didn't totally buy into that. Um, it wasn't such a dark story in the first. It's not dark like a lot of the Vanishing Points or Sleep or what other dark things have we got here? Anyway, or the Hero Trade. It was more of a light romp anyway, but it was a little. I don't want to spoil it. It's still worth reading, and if you like Philip K. Dick, you'll want to read this in issues or in trade. In at number 7, I've got The Sixth Gun. Really fun book. I really want to reread now the huge tomes that I have of the original Sixth Gun run. This is a sequel to that, The Battle for the Six. if you're being picky, you could ask yourself, why do we need to go into all this again? But that's not really important. It is a really cool story. Very much has the kind of it's the same kind of entertainment as BPRD and the whole Mignola universe, but it has its own flavor and everything. But if you like that, you'll like this, is I guess what I'm saying. I hate when reviewers say that. Now I'm saying it. Um, I don't, I think I did a video where I reviewed some of these books before, and then I trashed it because I was kind of feverish or something. Um, so I can't remember if I said these things based on, this is Sixth Gun issue 2, if I already said these things on issue 1. But wonderful, the art and the line art and the coloring just really draw you in and keep you hooked. And of course, there's a lot of interesting characters. They're a little hard to keep up with, but you feel like you can catch on as you go along in the story. And it may help with some of them anyway to go back to the original Six Gun series and reread it. In at number 6, I've got Geiger, a very strong issue of Geiger. We only get Gary Frank in like the last few pages, but the substitute artist Eduardo Pacina did an excellent job. And it's kind of like a new chapter, a new phase in Geiger's life. Um, and I don't want to give away too much, but we get to explore life in a prison where people manage, because of the prison's location and maybe the way the structure of it was, managed to avoid the worst of the Holocaust that has happened. And but the society within the prison is less than desirable, as maybe is not surprising. And apparently there's a treasure involved, or so think the people in the prison. So really cool. Geiger stays really strong. Daredevil Cold Day in Hell. This third issue is the last one. Oversized issues, I think like maybe 40 pages in each issue. An incredible work by Steve Niven, a strong work by Charles Soule, great coloring by Dean White also. Um, I think the ending didn't the story felt so weighty up to the ending. The ending felt a little pat. Better than the ending of Benjamin, but that's my only complaint. But I really loved the journey of this story, and I think the artist, the good writing and the great art kind of elevates this to almost striking distance of some kind of classic Daredevil story, but it doesn't quite get there. And most comics don't. So I don't hold it against it, but I think because it evoked a bit of that Dark Knight Returns vibe, part of me thought, well, maybe this is supposed to become a masterpiece, but that's not fair. A lot of fun from the Ice Cream Man creative team doing Superman: The Kryptonite Spectrum. They really wisely, in my opinion, dig into some of the Silver Age vibe of Superman, along with a bit of a modern take. So it feels, I mean, again, it's probably not going to be the masterpiece that was All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, but it feels like it's within shooting range of that. And it feels like they were smart enough to look at that book and take some lessons from it. I'm always surprised with a lot of Superman that came after All-Star Superman that more people didn't learn from what the fantastic work that Grant Morrison did on that comic as a writer, and mind that vein more, take that version of Superman more seriously. And the art really sung for me, and I've only slowly become a fan of Martin Morazzo on Ice Cream Man, and I've always wondered, am I just liking his art because I've fallen in love with these stories? But here it was art forward. I'm loving the way he draws this almost Silver Age Superman. Um, so it feels like a little bit Frank Quitely and a little bit Kurt Swan and a little bit something else entirely. But so it's really cool. Really loved it. All of these later books, Daredevil, Geiger, Sixth Gun, could have been number one books in a given week. And that continues with We're Taking Everyone Down with Us. This story just keeps being so cool and going, exploring things that are a bit familiar, like James Bond villains and supervillains and spy agencies, but never quite feeling like it's doing the expected thing. And we get a new kind of twist about the nature of this young girl and perhaps of her parents, and what her parents were up to in this issue. And I guess it's going to end next issue. And my only complaint will be that this didn't go on forever, or, for 20 or 30 issues. But perhaps better to leave them wanting more, right? Another incredible book, as I've been saying all along, is Batman and Robin Year One. All the pieces are in play now. The stakes have gotten even higher. Twists have happened. Will there be more twists in the last two issues? It's going to be 12 issues. Chris Samney and Mark Waid just not missing any beats here. And I'm really appreciating that they got to stretch out this miniseries into 12 issues and fully kind of dive into this year one story. And this might be idiosyncratic of me, but my absolute favorite was Batman Gotham by Gaslight, A League for Justice. It's issue 2, but it's really issue 8 in the overall story, because there was another Batman Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age, I think that's what it's called, which was the first half of this story, went for 6 issues. Now we're getting the second half. And it just remains strong. Leandro, where are the credits? Oh, it says full names on the cover. Thanks. Leandro Fernandez and Matt Hollingsworth. Matt Hollingsworth on the color, do an awesome job. Leandro is another artist who does interesting things with space and light and shadow. And Matt Hollingsworth finds great ways to color that and just highlight. And along with that, Leandro in my opinion, just does great, as do all these top books, but I just really stood out to me how nice the storytelling was. Now, how much does that come from the writer, and how much the writer, Andy Diggle, is obviously doing a great job too. But in my head, I'm crediting Leandro with a lot of great sort of visual storytelling, so that it just flows and flows, and there's some special pleasure in the visual storytelling for me in this issue. Pretty amazing that so many DC comics are up in the top zone for me. A lot of great stuff going on at DC. And, I admit I am just not paying a huge amount of attention to Marvel, because they just, for me, don't have a great track record in the past, I don't know, 8 years or so. So they're just a poor bet. I think the only reason I was on Daredevil is because the first issue got such a rave review from Robbie at Pop Culture Philosophers. Anyway, that's my haul. I actually got through it. I am actually gonna take a red-eye flight across the country tonight, so I will probably edit this all together later. But thanks for joining me on this comic book journey, and I hope to see you all again.